I almost did this video in a cardigan, and I'm so glad I didn't. Hey friends, it's your good friend Tim Campbell-Smith, and today I'm going to talk to you about whether you should freelance or create an agency in your marketing career. If you decide you do want to be self-employed, I want to explore the two routes with you. I know when I started out, I decided I was going to, in my mind, it was freelancing. And then I did some informational interviews with digital marketers to just get a sense for the career before getting in the industry. And everyone had told me, create an agency. The highest goal you can aspire to is to create a digital marketing agency. And I found out that is not true. Running a digital marketing agency is not for everybody. So now I want to present both sides equal, fair, and balanced about why maybe going it alone, freelancing solo, is ideal. We'll talk about pros and cons, and why maybe running an agency is ideal. The pros and cons of running an agency. Before we go too far, make sure you like and subscribe for all things business, mental health, higher ed, photography, and life. So my background, kind of to qualify this, at the time of recording, I'm at 8 years in business and practicing as a digital marketer. I started as a freelancer, worked towards building an agency, had some of the components of an agency, and just experienced it enough to know that it was not for me. And so I backed away and have come back to, and now I work solo technically as a freelancer. But I've also mentored and supported other freelancers and agency owners, both as a freelancer, but also as a mentor and in terms of business development. So I've seen a lot of it. I'm gonna go over first the pros, so freelance pros, and then the pros of agencies, and then we're gonna go into the cons of running an agency and the cons of freelancing. And I'm just gonna leave this with you, so you can decide if you wanna freelance and go solo or run an agency. So let's start with the pros of freelancing, which is what I have the most experience with and kind of why I still do what I do. First, you do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. You offer whatever services you want. You take whatever projects you want. You develop whatever skills you want. You do whatever you want. You are in control. You are driving the bus. You get to do what you want. There is freedom and flexibility and the ability to change. It is also, as a freelancer, you are way more adaptable and able to adapt and change to what people want, to the economy, to whatever's going on. You set your own hours, you work as you need and when you need, you take time off as you need. Something else I think is a total pro of being a freelancer that I love is there's no barrier, there's no thing between you and the client. Like, there isn't a manager, there isn't a mandate, there isn't like usually a prescribed requirement other than what's in your contract. When you freelance, 100% of sales, 100% of that money goes into your pocket and you control the sale. So you can apply discounts, you can apply upcharges, you can apply extra charging as you want when you want. When you freelance as well, it is way easier to specialize in one thing and to become like an expert in one thing. On the flip side to that though, a really awesome part of being a freelancer is you get to work on lots of different things. You will typically work on many different things. I know this really appealed to me because I'm a multi-potentialite, so I have lots of different potential in lots of different areas. I have lots of different interests. Being a digital marketing generalist and working across industries lets me just really feeds my curiosity. So I'm constantly learning about lots of different things. I'm applying what I'm learning to many different scenarios, which I find really intellectually stimulating, and it's one of my favorite parts of being a solo freelancer. That said, there are also a lot of pros to running an agency, to creating and running an agency. First, you can have so much talent available to you and at your disposal, meaning you can offer so many different things and almost whatever you want to clients. And this is one of the perks of why businesses love to work with agencies and why I think it's smart in many cases to work with an agency, because they can offer what you need in-house and in one ecosystem. So people talk together, they work together. So rather than having one freelancer photographer over here and a freelance paid ads person and a freelance copywriter, you have them all in-house working on one thing, which is awesome, and you have that available to you, you can offer that to clients. Next, and this is something I'm a little envious of as a freelancer, but you are only responsible for what you want to be responsible for. You don't have to be responsible for everything. So like, if you don't want to do sales, you can hire a salesperson. If you don't want to do the digital marketing, so you don't want to create the website, you don't want to do the ads, you can hire someone who does that for you so that you are only responsible for what you want to be responsible for. This does and can lead to a con, which we'll talk about, which is like how much you're paying people, but generally, you are in control of what you're responsible for. Next, a pro of having an agency is that you can have like a team environment and a collaborative environment. Being self-employed is super lonely and it can be really isolating. But when you're in an agency and you run an agency, you have a bunch of people that you can talk to and work with and work alongside. Next, and this is unique from like the client perspective, but with an agency, there is less risk when working with an agency than versus a freelancer. So like a whole agency isn't going to disappear versus like a freelancer, and we'll talk about this in the cons, can, which I hate to admit this is based on a true story. But there's less risk that the agency is going to disappear or just like not do the work. So you have an added layer of security and risk management. And the other big pro of running an agency is if you can use your team and lean on them for marketing, they can help grow your agency for you. Because freelancers typically, and again, we'll talk about this in the cons, typically freelancers have to be doing their own marketing as well. But if you have a team, you have other people who are willing to promote the agency, you can just grow that much faster. That said, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are definite and very bold cons or downsides to being a freelancer and to being an agency. When you are a freelancer, you are personally responsible for everything all the time. And this means having to use multiple skill sets. So you are the CEO, you are the marketer, you are the bookkeeper, you are also the person who delivers the services to the client. Next, you have to market yourself. You gotta know, I've had probably a couple dozen clients by now who were other digital marketers who they know marketing, but it's kind of a surreal experience when you have to apply the principles of marketing to yourself because you're no longer as subjective and it subjectively hits you. Next, another notable con with being a freelancer is that you can only offer so much. You can't be everything to everyone because you will end up being nothing to no one. You won't be good at everything. You'll be barely mediocre at a lot of different things, and that's not ideal. So you have to choose like at best a few things to be good at and then really hone in on those things and not constantly be worried about or thinking about these other things that you could be doing. You know, you got to be good at what you're good at and stick to it. Next, the obvious one, you don't get paid unless you work. Another con is that any risk or error falls directly on you. If anything goes wrong, just literally anything goes wrong, it falls on you. You have to manage it. This was a pro of agency, and we definitely have to address it as a con of being a freelancer. There is a concern, and I've definitely, like, as a freelancer, I've had clients ask me about this. I call it about, like, bus-proofing your business, but, like, what happens if I, as a freelancer, get hit by a bus? And I can no longer work or I can no longer deliver services. What happens? There's a risk to being a solo practitioner. You have to find a way to manage that risk. Another con of freelancing is taxes and accounting, which is complicated at the best of times, but especially like in the province of Ontario in Canada, if you're a sole proprietor, it just gets even muckier because there's not really a separation between the business and the person, but there is, and you have to manage all of that. Another con with being self-employed and doing it like for yourself is that it can be incredibly lonely and isolating. So you've got to work to build a community. And finally, I think the other big con to being a freelancer is you have to be incredibly motivated. You are working alone for yourself and by yourself, and nobody is demanding that you get work done by a certain time except your clients. But if you're managing the clients, that could lead to an abuse of power. So you have to be incredibly self-motivated. That said, there are definitely some cons to running an agency, and this from someone who tried. Number one, you will be doing so much marketing. But for your agency, if you run an agency, usually the owner of the agency is in charge of filling the pipeline, keeping the pipeline full. You've got to love marketing and marketing your own thing that you created, your agency and your team and what your team does. Not just marketing, but the sales. You've got to be persuading people to buy from you and getting them to sign on the dotted line. Next, you have to deal with the perception of agencies, and especially of marketing agencies. Some businesses and people will perceive agencies just to be money-making machines. This is feedback I've heard as a solo freelancer about companies that worked with agencies, and now, for example, they work with me. They said, yeah, because I was just a number, because I had 18 different people I had to work with, and I never knew who to really go to, and they didn't really deliver, and they're slow to get things done. So you have to be aware of the perception of agencies and some of the negative bias that people have against agencies. That bias, those perceptions, they may not be the most accurate, they may not be accurately rooted in fact, but if your consumer believes that, you have to work with that. Next, if you're not doing marketing and sales, you are managing people and projects. This is what killed me and really led me to not want to be an agency owner at all. I hate people and I hate running projects. But as an agency owner, if you're not selling and marketing for your agency, you are managing people and managing projects to make sure they get done. So you will have to handle underperformers, conflict, client perceptions and what clients want, and changing client wants. The final really notable con to running an agency is your finances as an agency owner, because you will be only ever making a fraction of what the agency brings in. When the agency brings in money, a certain amount has to go to taxes, it has to go to the government, and then it has to go to your biggest expense, which is going to be your people, either contractors or employees. It's going to be overhead costs. And then at the end, you get paid, if you can get paid. So just keep that in mind. It's not like you might take pride in saying, oh, our agency brought in $2 million in revenue. But if your contractors and your employees and your overhead is sucking a lot of expenses, if you're only making $30,000 a year, that's not awesome. So you have to keep that in mind. As an agency owner, you are only ever making a fraction of the revenue. So to figure out how much you want to make, you have to expand on that and do some really fancy kind of math and accounting and have a good control of your finance to make the target income you want to make. And those are your big pros and cons of freelancing versus running an agency. Comment and let me know where you fall on this. Does freelancing sound more appealing? Does agency and running an agency sound more appealing? Or if you know of any other pros or cons to freelancing or agency life, I would love to hear it in the comments as well. As always, make sure you like and subscribe for all things business, mental health, higher ed, photography, and life. Otherwise, we'll chat soon. Bye for now.